Want to thank you for coming on the show tonight. I realize it's 4 a.m. in your time, is it not?
It certainly is. It certainly is, yeah.
Well, as you can tell from the intro, it's a crazy, crazy world, but I don't have to tell you that. You've made a number of films. Give us an overview into just what you talk about in some of these films. One of them we played a couple portions of a couple weeks ago. It was Spirit World.
Yeah, well, there is a segment in my film Spirit World. I'm actually making Spirit World 2 now. My first Spirit World film came out last year, and there's a part of that film that discusses the the changes, the weather catastrophes which we're seeing right now. And it also discusses the fact that many ancient cultures believed that the planet, the actual planet itself, is a super living organism, and that the pollution which we see happening is actually being contrived by these sort of ancient families that control the world economic system in order to kill or at least dull down the actual spirit of the planet.
I think there's a shift in consciousness taking place right now, Chris, and a lot of the knowledge that has been hidden previously seems to be re-emerging,
Yep, I think
exposed in
that's
the light
true.
of day, where previously we had no idea that these families existed in the past because, of course,
Yeah.
they controlled the educational school system. Well, today they do, but we have this information highway at our fingertips. But I'm wondering now, with all this disclosure of information, what we're really facing and what's really going on in light of these new challenges with the earth changes.
Well, just before we went on air, I mentioned the Kogi Indians to you. The Kogi Indians are an entire nation, but the nation is unrecognized by the government of Colombia. They're unrecognized by the United Nations. The Kogi Indians are based just north of the Santa Marta Mountains in Colombia. They're not that far from Bogota. And, you know, this is an ancient society, and they teach that the oil, the actual crude oil, is rather like the crude oil flows around the planet the same as blood flows around a human body. And the crude oil lubricates the tectonic plates on planet Earth. And perhaps one of the reasons why we're getting, so many earthquakes at the moment is because there are vast amounts of oil that have been taken out of the planet. And obviously the planet was never designed to have billions of barrels of oil taken out of it every week. And so that's just one aspect of ancient knowledge, which, these ancient cultures in the Americas we must remember that the United States of America was founded on the genocide of ancient nations such as the Kogi, the Blackfoot, the Hopi, the Cree. All of these people had a version of natural earth science which they studied and was part and parcel of their actual indigenous American Indian culture. And the United States of America was formed by Freemasons, mostly Freemasons, people that came from the European elite. And the USA was formed, after a bloodbath of these people. And of course, they killed those indigenous people, but they also deliberately suppressed and killed the information that those ancient nations used to have in their oral traditions.
For example, their calendars.
Yes, calendars. That's true. There were many different types of calendars. Most famous one was the Mayan calendar. And the Mayans were great astronomers, great astrologers. And if you see Mel Gibson's film Apocalypto, you can see that the royal elite, traditionally in history, especially with the Mayan culture, the royal elite have always been sky watchers. They've always been people that have kept information about the cosmos, about the cycle of planets, about the cycle of eclipses, especially, as a secret for the elite. And in Apocalypto, you see the Mayan royal elite who mapped, actually, the sequence of eclipses, hundreds of years in the future. And you see them use this information and this knowledge and integrate this knowledge of eclipses into their rituals, and use that to impress the crowds and the lesser educated members of Mayan society.
You know, it's very interesting, Chris, because in our own society here, it appears that the governments are preparing to deal with something around the time period of 2012. If you look at their actions and the exercises and these preparations for a catastrophic reality, it's strange because we're also coming up on the Mayan calendar of 2012, something that's reaching its way to more and more people. The fact that a calendar does exist that ends at 2012, more people are beginning to ask themselves what it really means.
Yeah, that's right. Well, there has been in the European calendar, in the Roman European calendar which we use, there is, what people refer to as a lot of slippage. And it's not really just 2012, it's really from 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, it's that period, which is not only highlighted in the Mayan calendar, but it's also highlighted in some other ancient texts. For example, the Oracle of Sibyl in Greece spoke about this exact same period as being a period of tribulation, a period of upheavals. There are apocryphal scripts as well that were discovered in the 1940s that date back from the early century, the first and second century of Christianity, that also refer to this period. It's for sure a situation where what I believe is happening. You see, the word apocalypse just means a revealing of knowledge. Apocalypse does not necessarily mean complete and utter meltdown and war and catastrophe. And it should be remembered that the world's most popular and accurate psychic from the medieval era was Dr. Nostradamus, who lived in just 5 minutes away from where I live now. And he foresaw a vision of the Earth that continued until the year 3745. And I don't believe that we're on an imminent, complete, utter meltdown. What I do think is happening is that there's more and more people coming into the knowledge of how the European aristocratic families, since the time of the Roman Empire and just before then, have manipulated politics from behind the scenes using a whole network of secret societies and cults, such as the Skull and Bones at Yale, the Bavarian Illuminati. Before then, we had the Spanish Illuminati called the Alumbrados, and the Vatican. And what I see is now millions, literally millions of people are beginning to realize that what you see on the television, what you listen to for the most part on the radio, is all influenced and manipulated by these powerful individual families. And that for me is, apocalypse means a revealing of knowledge. And 10 years ago, I used to mention the Illuminati to people, and they never used to know anything about it. But now, nearly everyone knows about and accepts that people like the Clintons, the British royal family, the Dutch royal family, the what I call the royal political elite, are all actually members of these secret societies that influence politics from behind the scenes.
And it's funny, their trademark logos, or some have called them the gang signs, have been consistent over the course of hundreds of years, sometimes thousands of years, from the Roman fasci to the fasci that sits in the United States today, also a symbol borrowed by Adolf Hitler. And we have a graphic of that as well under the fasci category. It was also in our dimes in the 1950s. Next to that, we have other symbols like the torch. We have Adolf Hitler in 36 running around the torch for the first time. Before, it was just a symbol of something, the eternal flame, used in the Olympics. And then all of a sudden, we have the torch being ran around in Nazi Germany in 36 along with the rings. And here it stands today, still being run around the country. Today by who? China. I find it all, Chris, to be just a wee bit sickly ironic.
Yeah, I mean, those symbols, you're absolutely correct. They date back to the Roman Empire and before. And in actual fact, if you go to Washington, D.C., you can see architectural buildings which have more or less been copied from famous buildings in the Roman Empire. And also there are Egyptian influences in the architectural layout of Washington. And in my film, The Antichrist Conspiracy, all my Illuminati films are available for IlluminatiDVD.com. There's actually a micro website for each of my films there. But the second film I made about the Illuminati network of secret societies, which is called The Antichrist Conspiracy, actually shows that the plan of Washington, D.C. is using elements from the ancient Roman Empire, and it's also using elements from Egypt. And the canal that you have leading up to the Washington Monument, this is a feature that you find in underground temples in ancient Greece, where oracles, these were psychic mediums who never used to go above ground. Very rarely they used to go above ground. And these psychics were visited by the great elite thinkers, the elite rulers of the Roman Empire, people who really designed the Roman Empire, people like Socrates, Aristotle, and of course Democritus. Now, what I should say is that the system of democracy, which we saw evolve in the Roman Empire, was actually a sick joke. And the people that created the democratic system, where you have the Senate, the senators, and this ring, or this House of Representatives, that were a buffer between the people and the royal family, the Caesars. The people that were running the democratic system in ancient Rome even admit in their own writings that the democratic system, so-called democratic system, from Democritus, did not actually work once you had more than 300 people. What we call democracy nowadays is really basically a person, a member of the public, who goes into a booth, they put a simple cross on a scrap of paper, and remember, a cross is historically the substitute for a signature. A cross is really the mark of an illiterate person. And they put this scrap of paper into a black box, and for the next 5 years, 4 years or 5 years, an elite can do whatever they want based on these scraps of paper. Well, who counts the scraps of paper? Well, in Britain and in many parts, many countries of Europe, the ballot papers, the actual voting papers, are counted by people who work in local government. And those people are traditionally Freemasons, members of the Round Table, and members of other secret societies. There is actually no proper democracy working anywhere, in any country, anywhere on planet Earth right now. In actual fact, what we have is we have a democratic dictatorship. And a good example would be the presidential election of 2004, I believe, where you had John Kerry and George W. Bush, and out of 300 million people, it just so happened that the two men out of 300 million people that were chosen to fight the presidential election were both members of the Skull and Bones secret society, which itself is an offshoot from a European secret society that was started by Adam Weishaupt in Bavaria, in Germany, in the late 1700s.
Mm-hmm.
So the influence of the Roman Empire, this fake form of democracy, we're really seeing that happening right now, not only in America, but in many other parts of the world as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Chris, where do you think they're taking our planet right now? A lot of people are convinced that while we're not seeing the end of the world, and I'm not somebody seeing the end of the world, I'm seeing the end of this phase of civilization. Perhaps engineered by someone else. There are some indicators that that's the case, but we can see some things clearly changing with our economy and this omnicide, the war on the trees, the planet itself, through the genetically modified viruses and forms of life that are out there. So where do you see things going in the next couple of years? And then I also want to ask you about some of this top secret space exploration that's been going on.
Okay, well, what I believe is happening, this research came out when I was making Spirit World. My Spirit World film actually has taken more than 5 years to make. What I think is the situation is that the planet itself is a super living organism. And we have billions and trillions of different types of living creatures, insects, and all different categories of life living on our planet. And these trillions of life forms are, in actual fact, physical manifestations of the will of the spirit of the actual planet to exist itself. And I believe that all planets are actually super living organisms, and they each have their own unique kind of system. And they have their own physical system, they have their own spiritual systems. In actual fact, the most influential, most ancient books about magic, which are the foundation teaching books which are used to teach people when they go through the initiation degrees of World International Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, and other secret societies. Those books, they all say that planets and stars are spirits. Not only that, but some of the planets and stars are actually termed as angels. And in ancient Greece, Zeus, the god Zeus, is actually the planet Jupiter. And so I believe that every single planet has its own spirit. Now, what we see here on the Earth is we see oil being sucked out of the planet. And as I said before, the Kogi Indians consider the oil to be like the blood of the planet. We see, like you say, a war on the trees, the actual forested areas. And remember, the whole of Europe used to be one gigantic forest. For example, the United Kingdom, especially Cornwall, Devon, Wales, that was just one never-ending forest. The whole of Ireland was an entire island forest. Deforestation is not only a catastrophe for the living organisms that live in those forests on the surface of the planet, deforestation is also an enormous catastrophe for the atmosphere of the planet. And our atmosphere is definitely being changed. Now, you mentioned genetic modifications. There are tomatoes and other different food products in mainline products and also being sold just as normal fruit and vegetables in our supermarkets, which have genes from animals injected into these fruits and vegetables. And this is no secret. There are huge investments going on right now. I'm talking about millions and billions of dollars in how the genetic material from certain animals can be injected into fruit and vegetables. And I'll give you for example, many of the tomatoes in Europe for sale today contain genetic material from spiders. Now, people who spend all their time planning on how to inject a tomato with the genetic material from a spider, hanging is too good for these people. They are trying to become, the spiritual, physical, genetic masters of this planet.
They want to live forever.
Yes. There is certainly a theme throughout history with all of these elite families, the richest, most powerful families on the planet. They are all, one time or another throughout their history, fascinated with the idea of obtaining an elixir of life or obtaining some special genetic information. A good example of that would be the Nazis, who went to the Himalayas and actually brought back a whole group of Tibetan lamas, Tibetan monks, to Berlin, and they were formed into their own sort of mini secret society called the Men with Green Hats. And the reason that the Nazis wanted these Tibetan lamas back in Germany is because there's a great tradition in Tibet of reincarnation, and the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying teaches you that if you know the signs through the death experience, you can guide your soul into a fresh body, and that you will remember a lot of your previous life. And the Nazis, the elite, who, let's face it, were actually funded by banking corporations in America. Heinrich Himmler was the godchild of Prince Heinrich of Bavaria, who is in turn related to the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha royal dynasty of Europe. And those people are the same family as the British royal family. The German Nazi elite, wanted to use this ancient information to try and perpetuate their souls and their spirits into fresh bodies forever, and to rule the world forever. So, these themes, these subjects are all interconnected.
Do you think that some of these people are going to be successful in getting their bodies, their physical bodies, off the planet? Because it does seem like that's in the works for some of these individuals and characters with the money to do so. I mean, they have a lunar ark they're building on the moon, and that's just what we know about. The Doomsday Seed Vault, for whatever reason, over near Norway. And so we're wondering what they are aware of that we haven't been told about.
Well, if you go through, lots of magazines, especially magazines and newspapers published in Canada and America, there are lots of companies actually making various protection-type panic rooms and chambers and survival units which can be buried into the ground. To be absolutely honest, looking through history, when I was making my Illuminati films, I came to the conclusion that people who are scared and so afraid that they are just going to buy a survival unit and bury it into their backyard and, stock up on foodstuffs and just live in the ground. This is really the ultimate goal of the Illuminati super wealthy families. This is exactly the way they want people to react. The catastrophes that you see on the news, they are happening, but there's also rumors of catastrophes such as economic catastrophes. And what the Illuminati elite families want you to do is to be scared. They want you to live in fear. Fear is a tool which they've used throughout history to control the population. If people are living in fear, they're less likely to organize a rebellion. Revolution is what the Illuminati families fear the most.
And one of the things that they do here in this country is they bombard us with so much information, most of it bad news, warped news, that a lot of people just become apathetic and completely shut down.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the other, that's the other main tactic which you see in the media. But I just want to say that, people should not be looking to bury themselves in a survival chamber in their backyards. What people need to do is they need to really study the successful revolutions that have happened throughout history, and there are quite a few of them. And they need to recognize that revolutions are generally, that they come up in cycles in history. Unfortunately, the most recent revolutions, such as the ones we saw in the Eastern Bloc countries and the Soviet Revolution, they were all pre-infiltrated and planned by the Illuminati families. At the time of the so-called Russian Revolution, there was no internet. There was no information superhighway. Now, the elite have got a double-edged sword situation. They want the superhighway because it's great for commerce, it's great for advancing, their agendas in the economic sphere. But at the same time, they are doing as much as they can to limit the information which is coming down through the internet. Now, revolution, when it's organized properly, creates no bloodshed whatsoever. In actual fact, there is a revolution happening right now where, as I said before, millions of people have come into the knowledge that the Illuminati network of global secret societies has existed for a long time. You used to mention these types of things 10 years ago. People used to not know a thing about them. And so we have a revolution happening now. I believe that, am I right in saying that Hillary Clinton is completely off the menu now as far as the presidency is concerned?
Oh, it's possible. Only time will tell. It's also likely that she could be the vice president or in some way or another work with the Obama campaign.
Oh, I see. Well, I said on the radio, I was interviewed in Canada, coast to coast, a couple of months ago, about 3 months ago. I would say that the favored presidential candidate, as far as the Illuminati family is concerned, would be Hillary Clinton. The reason for that is because the Clinton family genealogically are related to the Saxe-Coburg-Gothas, who are the British royal family. And Bill Clinton has already been a reliable slave for the elite, and he put forward a lot of elite agendas while he was president. He bombed countries, remember. He continued this this campaign of fear that I was speaking about just a little while ago. And I would have said that Hillary Clinton would have been guaranteed the White House. But you see that they're having to do a soft shoe shuffle at the moment, because so many millions of people, through the power of independent media, the internet, independent publications, are now realizing that the European royalty do control the American political system. And there is a revolution happening. It's happening right now, and it's happening in people's minds.
Chris, before I let you go,
what we need to do now is take that to the next level, where people, everyday people, normal people, start soaking up and taking opportunities to take what little parts of democratic power they can get in their local communities. And if we all invest some time and we all get involved in local government, in the mayor's office, we all take a few hours out of our lives to sit on the local boards which scrutinize police activity and scrutinize the judicial system, such as in Britain and Canada and in the British Commonwealth countries, lots of people can just become justices of the peace. We need to see normal, everyday, family people who are aware of the Illuminati's influence throughout history to take up positions of local democratic power, and then to grow an entire grassroots democratic system, and eventually throw away this ridiculous democratic system we have where the elite put these puppets such as John Kerry and George W. Bush in front of us on the media, and we need to start having real democracy, which in actual fact we've never had so far.
Chris, you have a couple websites. EnigmaTV.com is one of them.
Yes. There's a website for my Illuminati series of films. It's IlluminatiDVD.com. And my Spirit World film is available on SpiritWorldDVD.com.
Yes, and I've seen a couple of them. They're great, and you have David Icke featured in several of them, and I see Alex Jones in one of your more recent ones as well.
Yeah, Alex is featured in The Antichrist Conspiracy. There's a website for that film, which is AntichristDVD.com.
Well, Chris, thank you so very much for coming on.
Okay, well, it's been a pleasure, Alex.